G'day and welcome to the Off-Chain Podcast. Don here with you. Our guest today, we'll welcome him back, Misha Lederman, CMO at Sweatcoin, home of Sweatcoin and its 120 million plus registered users. Last time we had Misha on the show, he was teasing some research that they were just starting to compile and are presently peer reviewing, talking about the value of an active day. For an individual, this might mean some lifestyle benefits, maybe some economic value and benefits for an employer, for governments, and certainly across an entire population. The numbers seem to be astronomical. So we had to have Misha back on the show to tell us all about this research, what it found, what it means for you specifically, especially if you're an employer or if you're making public health policy decisions, or if you just want a better lifestyle. To see some of the research in hard data is really, really interesting. And again, some of the numbers, especially the dollar values, are huge. So Misha's back on the show to help us understand what it means for us, what it means for you, what it means for Sweat, and how Web3 might help change the world. Welcome back, Misha. Let's dive in. Let's just get cracking. And I will say, Misha, it is really good to have you back on the show. I heard you had a very interesting time at Token 2049. And on the last show we had you on, you mentioned that you were looking at doing some research or publishing some research. Tell us, why did Sweat Economy commission specifically academic research to value an active day? So, measuring it at 10,000 steps. It was a bit hush-hush before, and now it's public. Help us understand, what are the most exciting things about this day?
Great question to open with. First of all, Dom, thank you so much for having me back. Last time we did a podcast, I really, really enjoyed it, and the community itself in Sweat had a lot of great feedback as well.
Good to hear.
Getting back to your questions, why did we commission this research with 3 different universities and a think tank? The reason for commissioning the research itself was to understand the true value of movement. And the findings itself, we'll get into them, of course, were really striking. So 10,000 step, as we see an active day being kind of quantified as, it leads to not only measurable health benefits for the individual, but it also shows that we can translate this into economic value on 3 different levels. So on the individual level, on an industry, more of corporate level, so employer, employee, and of course, the most profound one is societal and governmental level. And we really made sure that the research that Sweat commissioned centered around quantifying not only 10,000 steps. Kind of the beauty of 10,000 steps is universal, it's accessible. Most people have 2 legs that they can walk with, and which means that you don't have to buy a gym card. You don't have to join a fitness class. You don't have to join a yoga club. It is literally download an app and start walking, start running, start anything in terms of movement. Because I think the great thing in untapping something so universal as movement is that you can create a decentralized economy through the onboarding mechanism of something that we're all doing anyways, which is movement. We just see it as incredibly much more valuable than the rest of the world at the moment.
So is that about rewarding people who are active, or is that about incentivizing people to get active?
I think that is a really 2-edged sword here. There is some scary numbers that touch upon inactivity that I've been exploring in the past few months, something that was quite unknown to me before. However, according to the WHO and their latest report, that actually should be another report now in October, but essentially touches on 2022. So I'm talking about a year-old numbers, says that 1.8 billion people in the world are considered inactive.
Yeah, right.
I'll just repeat that. 1.8 billion people in the world are considered inactive. And I'm not talking about 10,000 steps as our benchmark for being inactive, to kind of achieve an active day. But I'm talking about the WHO's very low kind of, in terms of what actually quantifies an active day is probably 30 to 40% of what we see as one, if you quantify that. That being said, so it's around 28% of adults in 2022 who are considered inactive. But listen to this. Among adolescents, 10 to 19-year-olds, 81% of 10 to 19-year-olds are considered to be inactive people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And
how's that possible?
Well, I mean, it is possible due to devices, due to iPads, due to games, due to personal computers, due to the fact that we are living in an increasingly sedentary lifestyle. But we forget that the future of our race, human race, lies with our children. And if we don't teach them, instill in them that movement has value beyond of just these kind of health benefits, but it actually has tangible economic value, mental health value, in addition to the physical, then I think we're on a very, very slippery slope, and we're going to find ourselves in a decade or so on a global crisis level that is really beyond what we're seeing today, with obesity rates and cardiovascular diseases and diabetes too, spreading like wildfire. So I think, to your question, we need to address, number one, the global crisis of inactivity, while encouraging our current user base of 20 million installs, 3 million monthly active users on the Sweat side to push themselves, to kind of embody that spirit of endurance and perseverance, and have a victory every day where there is a daily sustained behavioral change in your health habits, and viewing movement as something that's integral to your part of your life, truly.
Is there anything, Misha, magical about that 10,000 number? I remember years ago when I lived at home, so we're talking like decades ago, my mum got a pedometer, like one of the ones that looked like a wristwatch, long before smartwatches, and 10,000 was like the magic number back then. Is it just like a grandfathered in from back in the day, or is there something particular about 10,000 steps?
Yeah, there is a ton of research made around that magical number, the beauty of 10,000 steps. And usually most doctors and MDs and kind of medical professionals in the academic field of sports science and public health say around 8 to 10,000 is that magical benchmark of if you do this daily activity, you are considered to doing an active day. Exactly what number it is, it also has to do with your body weight, your gender, your many other circumstances that kind of has to go with it. But that being said, we have to find a universal number to go with. And for us, what we wanted to do is kind of go to that higher edge, because we want to make sure that we have a sustained positive impact on our users. So 10,000 steps a day is something that is achievable. It's something that everybody can do. Should you just take away an hour or so, you can do 10 minutes in the morning, you can continue walking throughout the day, you can have half an hour in the afternoon, or you can have somewhat in the evening, where walking becomes your exercise. And I kind of see it as a bit of an entry drug into more serious exercise as well. So it's once you start walking, and I mean, personally, I try to do between 12 and 20,000 steps every day. Luckily, I have very young daughters, so I'm kind of forced to wake up very early, which I'm a lot more happy about now than I was as an early father. But I see a lot of benefit in actually taking them out even before school, after school as well. There's a lot of possibility of just walking with your children. And whether they are very small infants or they're just a few years old, it is something that we have to instill in our children, that movement does not have to be organized sports. It doesn't have to be. I'm a former professional football player from Sweden. Like, football is a huge part of my life, and it's kind of viewed as the core ethos of how I see movement and how I see physical activity. But we need to find a more universal benchmark that can work for people, whether you're in the UK, Australia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, South America. It doesn't really matter. If you can achieve around 8 to 10,000 steps a day, that's an amazing, amazing achievement on a daily basis. And it doesn't only contribute to your personal health and kind of personal mental health, of course, because, I mean, if you're actually moving and you're starting to achieve different milestones, you are feeling better, you have more energy, you're more productive. So that goes into your course. I'll go into some of the academic research that, I've uncovered incredible data around what productivity is impacted from just having a healthy, health-conscious employee base, which is pretty incredible. Just one of the research projects, Blockchain Research Lab from Hamburg, they found that the average increase in productivity from a employee who actually walks 10,000 steps a day and has an active day lifestyle compared to someone who does not is 30% increase in productivity. I'll go through the numbers. It's significant enough to have real impact. And that is not even touching upon what's happening on the governmental side in terms of healthcare cost saving and making sure that you prevent a lot of cost-heavy diseases that are simply preventative if you make sure that you move.
And so I guess you could infer that if there's a 30% bump in productivity among workers and 3 out of 4 teenage, like high school students around the world are sedentary, they're possibly missing out on that 1/3 bump in academic performance. I mean, that's not maybe explicit in the research, but, for me, I put those two figures together and I go, that seems like it is very significant, not just for their future, but even for right now.
Yeah, and it's actually not 3 out of 4; it's 4 out of 5, which is completely. Yeah, I mean, it's a staggering number. It's really worrisome, honestly. Once I found it, I haven't been able to take it out of my head. We went to Token 2049 in Singapore last month, the entire Sweat team, and we held a side event together with Cointelegraph to really highlight the not only academic research that we've made together with University of Birmingham, University of Cadiz, Caledonian University of Glasgow, and of course the Blockchain Research Lab, but also to gather forces within Web3 for a new paradigm, a new narrative of we are tired and we are somewhat sick of hearing about infrastructure. There's another layer 2, layer 0, there's a layer 3, there's talks of another mainnet launch, and I mean, it is enough already. So what we did, we organized a full day event, the day before the main conference began in Singapore, together with Cointelegraph, where we put our idea through that we are looking beyond the infrastructure bubble. What does that mean? What we see is that for the past decade or so, the blockchain industry has truly focused, with a lot of right behind it, on what is the importance of infrastructure, laying the rails for the future and passenger cars and passengers coming eventually on these rails. The problem is that historically, if you focus so much on the infrastructure and you forget about who's actually going to use that infrastructure, the passengers, or in terms of TV, the people who actually watch, or in radio, who listen. Mobile phones, the people who actually use the apps, or in the dot-com bubble. The value creation was created through Facebook, Google, Twitter, and other massive consumer apps, not from the infrastructure itself. Actually, the dot-com bubble is all about an infrastructure burst, right? So we see the same thing happening here now in blockchain, where there's going to be a massive shift from this infrastructure TVL focus of a metrics, so total value locked, to what we see as the most important. We have three massive important metrics that we want to kind of follow, and that is active users, and the second is active users, and the third one, you might guess, is active users. Because in the end, if we are unable to attract millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, eventually billion people into crypto to use great products simply because they're great products, not because they're built on blockchain, right? Then there's really no reason for us to create another mainnet or not. And especially us at Sweat, we've built, luckily enough, been fortunate to have built on Near, and they work extremely close with the Near Foundation, and Ilya and Alex and everybody else at Near Foundation are absolutely amazing, where we can tap into a very innovative infrastructure, and we can create multi-chain experiences through chain abstraction, chain signatures, where we suddenly are able to expand our network from one chain to 5 chains overnight. And I'll touch upon it a little bit later today, perhaps, but I think the infrastructure has been laid. It is very robust. It is highly secure. And the focus that we as an industry have to decide to take and to make is on consumer crypto app growth. There's nothing else that truly matters right now.
Can you explain, you mentioned chain abstraction, which I've been hearing more and more about over the last 6 months or so. Can you maybe explain it to our listeners, not like they're brand new to blockchain, but for someone who hasn't heard about chain abstraction before, why is this actually something that's really exciting and going to help, the proverbial grandmother to onboard into that application layer you were talking about before, and not just, all the DeFi people were interested in the next hottest L1 or L2?
Very well. Be happy to kind of lay out the works of what chain abstraction is and how we are utilizing it, of course.
Yeah.
So chain abstraction is all about, although it sounds quite complex, it's really simple in its essence. It's about abstracting or kind of removing the complexity of blockchains or different chains for the user. That's it. It means that for them, they simply have an experience that shows them, in our case, in Sweat Wallet, they shows them a wallet with all of their assets. But on this portfolio, so let's you say you have some Sweat, you have some Near, you have some Bitcoin, you have some ETH. It doesn't show which chain you're on. It simply shows your assets. But because chain abstraction allows you to have one Near account in Sweat Wallet, while abstracting or transacting on multiple chains with that one account through, the technicalities on the back end is, the architecture is quite complex. Near uses relayers in order to facilitate transactions on other chains. But you as a user see one account, assets, and the ability to send and transact, receive, hold. In our case, in Sweat, we are integrating, or we have just integrated and now testing among our user base, and we'll be going shortly live with this. We already have Near. Ethereum is one of the chains being integrated. BNB, Optimism, Arbitrum, and Base. to begin with. What does that mean? Any token that you have or want to transact or want to receive on one of these chains, you can do that through Sweat Wallet with one account, holding one key. This is very important as well. So we call it one wallet, Sweat Wallet, with one account. One key, meaning that you have one key to kind of manage all of your crypto needs. And you can, in our case, what we do is we onboard a lot of people from Web2. So for us, we want to have somewhat upgradable security or progressive security, we call it. So first you can do through magic keys, we call it. It's a social ID onboarding. So either Apple ID or Google ID, and you open your account. If you want to upgrade your security, you do 12 words. If you want to further upgrade your security, you do cold storage, ledger, and so on. So directly we kind of address all the needs of the market on that security front. But the third one is quite interesting because it's one wallet, one key, and one token. So what happens with the one token is that we're talking about gas here. So clearly, if you're going to use Ethereum, BNB, in the future Solana, Ton, currently Base, Optimism, Arbitrum, Near, it seems like you need a lot of different gas tokens to transact on these chains, correct?
Yeah.
Not at all. You need one token. In this case, it's Sweat. So Sweat as gas is not only going to work like it does today on Near, it will work as a universal gas token for any chain that we integrate through chain abstraction, which means you can pay your gas fees on any chain just by walking and using your feet.
That's pretty good.
It's quite the value proposition. And the beauty of it is that, like I said, we find ourselves fortunate of being kind of partnered up early on by launching on Near. Because Near already in 2022, when Sweat launched and became the largest project on Near, we're already thinking about how do they abstract other chains? How do you integrate other chains into that extremely simple user experience? Once again, it's all about the user. It's not what kind of infrastructure or what kind of Rails or what kind of DeFi protocols or what kind of DEXs or which other aggregator or indexer is out there.
Yeah.
It's all about what does the user find valuable and useful. And if you can answer those two questions with amazing products, you have a billion people business in the works.
Yeah. Well, coming back to this research, it'd be great for you to go through some of that research, but in terms of like just headlining that research, what are there any things that have come out of that research which have materially changed how Sweat is thinking about how you go about business or go about finding ways to reach new customers or existing users? Is it just a factor of, oh man, what we're doing is very, very important, and now we realize that even more? Or have there been any kind of material changes? Or even
I think it's
because it's pretty recent.
That's a great question. I think it's multifaceted. The research itself is the first time anyone in the world has ever tried to truly quantify the value, the economic value, the monetary value of physical activity. Not how much is saved exactly and how much of health costs and how much of health benefits. That's part of the research. But actually saying, if we quantify an active day by 10,000 steps as we do, what is that monetary value that we can use as a North Star on increasing the value of movement? So instead of me going kind of through here and there and how we are now using it in terms of kind of our own benefits, excuse me, the benefit of our users, and eventually the benefit of the crypto ecosystem. And for us, what we see, of course, having a massive impact on how we as people in the world, I'm not talking about only where I am, where you are, but as humanity, how do we view, how do we interact with, and how do we value movement is really, I think, something that has dawned to us and has had a profound shift in how we want to approach this. So let me just share my screen, and I'll go through some of the research results and how the academics that we partnered up with, how they approach this subject. So it really is all about the value of movement. And today, we don't really see movement as something else but a health habit or benefit. And what we have understood is that you can create an entire economy around movement, around physical activity, to begin with steps and eventually other movement validators. And our vision, as anyone who heard previous time when I was on this podcast, of course, is to create an entire movement economy. A movement economy is where you can use, you can interact with, and you can exchange the asset that you've generated, that is your movement, with third parties, with health insurers, with healthcare providers, and eventually with governments. And like I said before, I just want to reiterate, these numbers are really, really scary. This is 2022, so you can probably assume that by 2023, which is going to come out now in this October, that 1.8 billion of inactive people globally has probably reached 2 billion. So we're probably talking around 25%, of the world's population are considered inactive to very low standards, according to the WHO. Upon which, of course, 81% of adolescents, meaning 10 to 19-year-olds, are really living a sedentary lifestyle and are considered inactive. And you can just imagine the strain of society that's going to come just through that number itself. So what we did, we went out with an RFP, a request for proposal, where we asked academics around the world to explore the economic value of an active day, that is 10,000 steps, on 3 levels. So individual, industry, and governmental. And we were lucky enough to partner up with Dr. Mark Elliott and Dr. Dene Arroyos Calvera from University of Birmingham, Professor Justine and Dr. Borja from University of Cadiz and Glasgow Caledonian University, and Dr. Ante N. Fiedler from the Blockchain Research Lab, BRL, based in Hamburg. Just to get into some of those results then. So University of Birmingham, considered one of the top 10 universities in public health in the world, came up with a very interesting approach on how to calculate the method on how to actually see what the worth or the potential value of an active day or 10,000 steps is. So one of them is on an individual level, you see down here on the left, is that economic value per active day from quality adjusted life years, meaning how many quality years or years of quality life do I add to my life by staying active. And they were able to quantify that is around 6 to 7 years. And if you then quantify that through economic terms, you have per day a value of 10,000 steps being valued per person at $6.25.
Wow.
And that for us was a really kind of eye-opening number, because it is clearly a lot higher than what the market values physical movement today. The only true physical capturing of movement in the crypto market today is through Sweat, where we have a fraud-proof system stretching over a decade with our Web2 sister app, Sweatcoin, which also functions as our step validator, where we are able to truly know if someone is moving or someone is trying to fake or fraud it. So in order to then see that the current value is around $0.01, the fact that they reached such a high conclusion was quite eye-opening. In terms of the governmental savings, then, so the economic value per active day from University of Birmingham from health cost saves is around 2.34. And I'll come to a median soon, where essentially we group them all together. University of Cadiz, we did a really interesting thing. We actually used the Sweat DAO together with Dr. Borja and Professor Justine and it's actually being peer reviewed right now, and it's going to come out in a medical journal, where 157,000 estimates were used from the Sweat community DAO inside the app, inside the Sweat Wallet app. When we asked them the same question, of course, written by the academics, so it's academically sound, and we asked, what do you think that you should be rewarded for walking 10,000 steps a day? At the time that the universities got the kind of data down and were able to process it, of course, anonymously, but then it was $5. What reached after that, we continued it, was actually $6.20. So this is the actual median here, as you can see. The Sweat DAO crowdsource of wisdom actually reached $6.20, which is really close to University of Birmingham 6.25 for their kind of quality adjusted life years value of 6.25 compared to 6.20. We found that really, really interesting. To browse through, the Blockchain Research Lab did something quite interesting. As you can see there in the pink, 104.85. It's a bit of an outlier, as you can see. Everything else is around the dollar mark, or between $1 and $6. But they essentially grouped it all together for individuals and saw what kind of value do you have on your entire life, and then quantify that to reach $104.85. Exactly how valid that is, we still have to do a little bit more meta-analysis and research. But one other point of interest was something I mentioned before that the BRL found, was that the average increase in productivity from on an employer and a kind of corporate level is around 30% increase from someone who has an active lifestyle compared to someone who has an inactive lifestyle. And to quantify that number, you have that 4.38, meaning that economic value per active day for employers per employee is actually $4.38. And the economic value per active day for governments, they also use kind of health care cost savings models, was actually reached at 3.96. So 3.96, remember that number. Once you use all of the research results from Birmingham, Cadiz, Glasgow, and Hamburg, and you remove all the outliers, meaning those are very, very extreme examples in order to actually reach a median, you come to exactly $3.96. And that is something that we are using as a springboard for our phase 2 research, which will not only be using a lot more meta-analysis, but also tracking how the ability to use something so incentivizing, such as Sweat Wallet, actually increases the viability of staying active over a sustained period of time. So we're actually using step data anonymously and privately to make sure to see, is there a correlation between, once you have an app like Sweat, does it actually improve your sustained health benefits and behavior over time?
Oh, that's interesting. How are you doing that research? Is that in the app, or is that something that you're going to be getting people to do that research for you externally, as well as you have this research? Because that would be incredibly interesting. I get data on that.
Yeah. Once we have a clearer picture, we're currently speaking to several different partners on how to conduct this research and how to best combine that research with already the kind of research results that is being peer reviewed from the different academic research institutions that we have already partnered up with, so that we actually make sure that the phase one that I've shown you now, the academic research, be kind of complemented by the phase two, works hand in hand. So I can't really reveal exactly the methodologies and where we're standing at the moment, but it's definitely sparked a lot of community discussions and interesting viewpoints on how we view, how we feel, how we interact with, and of course, how we value movement. And for us, we see this really as a paradigm shift, because 20 years ago, if you would have said that attention was valued at a certain dollar mark or cent mark, people would probably laugh at you. But today, one of the largest economies in the world, the attention economy, is driven exactly by that, through Facebook and through the Googles and through the Twitters or X's of our time. And we believe that in order to capture and extract a value from movement, not only will we have a greater impact on society at large, but we'll actually be able to save thousands, millions, maybe even billions of people's lifestyle and many, many years added to their lives, simply because we introduce something that even in Web3, what we see is that, we at Sweat, we simplify kind of the Web3 onboarding by connecting users to something they do daily already, which is to move. And this really bridges the gap between what fitness and decentralized technologies can achieve separately. We simply understand the power they have when combined.
That's amazing. And I'd imagine as well, if the median value of 10,000 step active lifestyle is just under $4, considering there's that, again, 30% productivity bump for some, that would be significantly greater economic value, to the point where every employer should be very conscious of this kind of research.
Not only every employer, but every government.
Sure, yeah, sure.
The higher you go in the kind of pyramid of size, right? Mm-hmm. The larger that quantified number becomes. So on the individual level, it might seem low. Okay, $396 a day, or $620 or $1. But if you quantify $625 per day, just like the academics from University of Birmingham suggested, that quantifies around $2,280 a year per person, right? Then that's on the individual level. Then if you come to the industry level, as you said, if you have a company of size of 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, even, the Amazons of hundreds of thousands of employees, who can then quantify the productivity increase and actually capture the value of movement on an empirical basis, then we're talking about billions of dollars in not only productivity gains, but also saved. Because of the lack of absenteeism, the reduction of presenteeism. Presenteeism is essentially someone showing up to work and just being present, not working very well. Yeah. And then just, the higher you go on a societal level, the healthcare costs involved in cardiovascular diseases, diabetes 2. You know that in the UK, diabetes 2 costs treatment eclipses, I believe, the judicial system and the system of, I believe, the police in the entire UK. These are mad numbers. And it's completely crazy that we have not found ourselves in a position where we speak of movement as an asset, where we speak of movement as an integral part of our lives, not just as individuals, not just as going to work, but also as a society. So, just to go over a bit of the kind of beauty of 10,000 steps we touched upon, of course, but I think what's important to understand, what we at Sweat are doing, is to understand the foundation that has been built to enable growth. So there are two sides to Sweat and to our business. The one side is the Web2 Sweatcoin. That is a business that has been around for 9 years. It has over 200 million installs around the world. Currently has 12 million monthly active users and 700 different partners over the years. And it uses an in-app currency, Sweatcoins, to gamify, reward, and incentivize users to stay more active. Sweat and Sweat Wallet is the Web3 branch that was started around 2 years ago, or September 2022. In those 2 years, I've been able to achieve 20 million installs, 3 million monthly active users this year, and have more than 70 partners. The difference here is that Sweat actually captures the value of movement and tokenizes it in order for this asset to be traded on more than 20 centralized exchanges and DEXs, but also stored in growth jars, which is our staking pools, played in different spin and wins and other in-game, in-app games and gamification methods. So there is a very strong foundation for growth. And like I said, we see a massive consumer crypto boom coming in the coming months and year. And we believe that given that we already are one of the most active dApps in the world with 3 million monthly active users, sometimes translates into 1.5, 1.9 million monthly on-chain active users, right? So not every app user actually do an on-chain transaction using Sweat, but of course we're working to expose more and more of users to that kind of behavior because we see great value in that transparency and the security and the ability to transact and actually exchange value of your movement. But we definitely see physical activity and physical movement as one of the greatest catalysts and drivers of this consumer crypto growth.
So those are some pretty large numbers. How are you going about engaging with, say, government, like I said before, with that size of a community, and no doubt they're across the world, so not necessarily all in one jurisdiction, but surely they're large enough numbers, and with this research that you have now as well, not just anecdotal or proprietary, based on app usage. I'm sure there's got to be some interaction that government is going to be able to have, or is the case that the governments have been trying to get people moving for a long time. I remember back in the 80s in Australia, we had this, and ever since we've had ads on TV growing up, during the cartoons saying, get outside and do exercise. And that it has been a feature of life in Australia, at least for decades. But it seems on trend, at least globally, I don't know how those numbers break down jurisdiction by, or region by region, but it seems globally the message isn't being heard, or it's not being taken to heart, or people have stopped listening, or we're just too addicted to devices to do anything about it. Or I guess I'm asking, what's next? Is it you just keep doing what you're doing with Sweat and try to grow that monthly active user, and you just, here's my section of the world and I'm just going to do good here while I can? Or is there a larger vision in terms of trying to, you mentioned 700 partners and 70 partners. Is it about trying to get more partners, either project partners or, government partners or other kinds of companies? Is that the goal? Just, one company at a time, one family at a time, one person at a time, or are you going for governments and regions too?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack in that question. I'll start with governments and I'll take a little bit from the playbook of Mr. Elon Musk. What he's trying to create right now is DOGE, right? The Department of Government Efficiency. Why? Because currently we have departments and bureaucracy of government inefficiency, right? We are all aware of it. We all understand that governments are probably the most inefficient way to distribute public funds. Yet, it is the sole responsible entity to actually do it. That means that everything that's been done wrong in terms of investment into incentivizing movement, building outdoor gyms, and you can't even use these outdoor gyms in most places. And we're talking about Europe, so I can't even imagine the level of it in other areas of the world. Most of them don't really make sense in terms of anatomy of a person, and yet these gyms pop up everywhere, and they cost most likely millions and billions of dollars. So instead of doing that, or building swimming or sports halls in different areas, there is definitely an interest and a listening ear among policymakers to have a different approach, because more and more of these kind of agendas that are being laid out for the future are really considering how do we move and how do we kind of value the health of our society from an individual level onto industrial level, and of course to kind of society at large. I've always thought that we should start the local governments first, engage them with the national governments, do pilot programs, and then essentially go to kind of a larger world supranational organizations. That being said, in 10 days, on October 18th, I celebrate 1 year together with Sweat after I graciously accepted the offer to become CMO here. And I've realized over this year that probably the most efficient way to achieve an opening of the ears of policymakers is not specifically at national government levels, and not even local government levels. It's actually supranational. So World Health Organization, whatever you might think about the WEF, but World Economic Forum, are setting policies that are then adopted by health ministries around the world. So this is definitely something that we are engaging with and considering on how do we make our value proposition be a global topic of conversation in these circles. So that is one part of the question. The other part of the question is, how do you actually create a movement economy? Right? We are not the movement economy. We see movement economy, of course, being powered by something so decentralized, so universal, so easily captured and easily understood, such as Sweat the token, because you can literally measure and fraud-proof pedometers and steps and walks and runs and jogs on a universal level. You don't need specific wearable. All you need is a phone, a smartphone, and you need to opt in to Sweat Wallet, and you can start your journey. You don't need to put out a credit card. You don't need to book cash. You simply use your human energy. You burn it in order to tap into that ecosystem. Just like you burn energy to mine Bitcoin, the same thing is about Sweat. You burn your own human energy to mint Sweat. And there's no other way to mint Sweat. The only way to mint Sweat is through movement today. And that's a real unique use case. And it's a very universal one. And I think it opens up a ton of doors in terms of partnerships, especially on the Web3 side, because suddenly you can interact with, especially now with chain abstraction, you can suddenly start interacting with new ecosystems, new dApps, new founders, new projects that are thinking differently around value creation, but also around the creation of new asset classes, because that's really what we see movement being. We see it as the creation of an asset class, just like data, accessibility, trading, and so on. We see movement as this really undervalued, somewhat overlooked asset class. So in order to build a movement economy, we need to really engage with partners from sports and health, nutrition, wearables, things like Whoop, Xiaomi, Apple Watch, and so on. But also thinking bigger is, of course, corporate wellness programs we already talked about. How do we actually engage with companies that are interested in that 30% increase in productivity, or reducing absenteeism, or reducing presenteeism? So that's another area of interest. And something that I touched upon last time I was here is our eventual long-term vision is to create a decentralized kind of health monetization option for our users, where you can opt in to share your data, your health data, on a decentralized blockchain secured server, distributed ledger like any other blockchain system, but you own it. It's your sovereignty. It's your data, which also means that you can choose to monetize it if you so wish. Of course, this is a longer term plan, and this is a part of the movement economy, but I think it highlights really well on how important it is to bring in partners who share our vision, who share our ethos, who share our goal of having a healthier, more health conscious population and general public that can also create a lot of wealth on the journey towards a healthier life.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the, every time you mentioned a monetary value, in my mind I'm also thinking that's amazing. And some of those numbers are astounding, like you say, especially as you extrapolate over a population. But then I'm also thinking about the qualitative stuff, like just a better quality of life. Like you said, additional years at the end of your life for sure, and that is good. Like I don't want to discount that at all. But
I'm sorry for interrupting you. But what about mental health? How do you even quantify that?
Yeah, totally.
Me personally, no one is perfect. Neither you nor me nor anyone walking on this beautiful earth. Sometimes we feel great. Sometimes we feel less great. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've noticed, at least, is to get out of a rut or out of a more difficult period in life is exactly that: movement. Mm-hmm. Just get moving, right? Yeah. Start walking. So just to relieve stress, to get out and, for instance, take a meeting on the go. For me, it's something that just it enables me to transcend and to come to a higher level, whether that is on a spiritual level, on a physical bodily level, and eventually, of course, on a mental level. So, I mean, one of the great darknesses of the world, of course, is depression. And, in the West, we're talking about 10 to 15% in some Western countries are on antidepressant pills, which is, I would say, a great failure of our society, that we reach that level. But that being said, there's a great opportunity as well, because movement incentivizes a smile. Once you've achieved that, 8,000, 10,000, whatever your goal is, of steps, it puts a smile within you. Once you've done half an hour at a gym, it is something that feels like, wow, I achieved that. It's that spirit of endurance, of perseverance, of overcoming your own limitations. And I think it is something that we really need to instill in our children more than anything else. But it needs to spread as a global movement. That's why we need to kind of infuse this passion beyond just the Sweat ecosystem, and include so many more interesting partners and parties into the movement economy.
Yeah, man, that's great. What a good vision. Was there anything particularly surprising to you, other than just the scale of the problem? Was there anything particularly surprising to you in the research?
That is a really, really interesting question. I've been, living and diving into this research for the past few months now, so intensely. I haven't really thought about like what was I personally, what was I expecting? Surprises has everything to do with kind of your expectations, right?
Sure.
So I wasn't really expecting much, meaning that I'd rather just go in as kind of first principle based on, okay, what actually are the key findings and the key messages that we are able to extrapolate from this research. But I think one of the more surprising facts, what I touched upon before as well, was that the experts at University of Birmingham, let's say, of 625 per day, as they kind of quantified the economic value of an active day for an individual through quality adjusted life years, QALY, was extremely close to what 157,000 estimates from our users inside the Sweat Wallet app through the DAO reached 620. So that's 625 and 620. That means the perceived value from our users around the world of 620 and the actual kind of worth, once you actually break down the data and the numbers, are so close that for me that was not only surprising, but it was even eye-opening. And we're definitely using both of those numbers as a North Star, as one of our missions is not only to make our users and the world a more active and kind of a place of more movement, but one of our kind of mission is also to increase the value of an active day over time.
Yes, right.
Through the engagement of partners, through the ability to exchange, transact, and actually use your physical activity captured in Sweat. So that was definitely a surprising and eye-opening component of the research.
That's cool. Misha, last time we had on the show, I asked what are you most looking forward to about the rest of 2024, and this research featured pretty heavily, although you couldn't say very much. Now that it's out, what are you most looking forward to for the remainder of this year and maybe into next year?
So what we've realized is that, changing the narrative of our industry from infrastructure that's been up until quite recently to AI, meme coins, dogs with certain hats or whatever it might be at a certain day. In order to change that big market narrative, we need to work with like-minded projects, founders, and protocols who share our vision of a user-centric and consumer-centric approach to blockchain, where the idea is not to track how much 10 high-value individuals or high-net-worth individuals put into a staking contract or a DEX. That's quite irrelevant and really boring to me personally. But how can we move the needle on consumer crypto growth by simply changing our idea that active users is the most valued metric? So what we see is essentially a new alliance among crypto native projects and even Web2 projects coming into crypto, where we are focusing on consumer crypto growth. We're focusing on dApps, on decentralized applications that cater for that growth, and of course working with protocols that understand the value and the importance of those users. So we are a leading voice, but we also need a lot more interested parties. That's why we organized this side event in Singapore at Token 2049 together with many, many partners, including Fabric Ventures, Spartan, Addressable, Swissborg, and many others who attended and who were able to put their 2 cents or 2 satoshis on the table around how we actually progress that notion. So look forward towards next year when we'll be joining forces, without saying too much, with some of the biggest players in the industry to really push for this idea that consumer crypto is going to boom and the infrastructure bubble is going to pop.
Yeah, man. That's great. If some of our viewers and listeners are founders and entrepreneurs and C-suite crew, how would they get involved, or how can they, if there are opportunities for partnership, how can they connect in with that?
Easiest way, if you're out on, crypto lives on X. I remember CC once, prior to his his tenure in the United States,
sure.
Let's say it diplomatically, he used to say that he spends 20 to 30% of his time on Twitter, as when he was the CEO of Binance. And I just found that interesting. This was around 2019, 2020. And I found it really interesting because it really showed the power of Twitter at the time. And this was really before Elon's takeover. The easiest way to find out more about us, of course, is to go to our website, sweateconomy.com. The second easiest way to not only find out more about us and our updates, but is also to contact us, is to send us a DM on X. So it's at Sweat Economy on X. And if you want to reach out to me personally, it's at Misha Lederman, MISHALEDERMAN.
Fantastic. We'll put those in the show notes as well. And obviously, for every listener, get moving, get the app, get moving, get rewarded. And Misha, mate, all the best for the rollout of this research. And man, I hope that it does not just inspire people, but organizations and governments, but even just families and individuals to get moving and see those benefits, both financial and quality of life. And good on you for being about the mission, man. Congratulations on the year there at Sweat.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks again for hosting me. I'd be happy to come back once we have even more insights on the value of movement, and especially how that ties into kind of consumer crypto boom and growth as well. And I think that the research is just the first step in a very, very long, intense, and as you said, kind of like passionate, mission-driven idea of what we do here at Sweat. And that is to combine the kind of intrinsic value of movement with something that is valuable and useful to millions at the current rate, but eventually billions of users around the world. Because in the end, if we don't, as we see it here, GM, get moving. It's not about good morning, but get moving, man. If we don't get moving, our world will not look the same in 10 to 20 years down the line. That's why it's so important to get involved. So download the Sweat wallet, get involved with the community, get involved in the DAO, and let's grow, man.
Thank you for joining us again today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Off-Chain. We love bringing you great guests like Misha. Hope we've inspired you to learn more about Web3, about technology, about artificial intelligence, and the future, and how you might be a part of building it. As always, please like and subscribe, or better yet, share this episode with a friend. Help us spread the word, and join us again next week for another exciting episode of Off-Chain with me, Don Reddin. Until then, take care.